Hello and welcome to Rate Reveal, interview 11. I'm here with Coach Z. Coach Z, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Christian. How you doing?
Good, good. I mean, we both just got called by Mr. Neller, so we're having fun. Yeah, so I like to start each interview by you introducing yourself. I don't think I can do any person justice, so introduce yourself.
All right. It was Mark Zielinski. People know me around the building as Mr. Z or Coach Z, or the guy who tells you to get to class on time in calls as an assistant principal. So right now I'm an assistant principal for the last 2 years, and I was a dean for 2 years before that. But I really most of my time here in North Brunswick was as a teacher and as a coach. So I was in the social studies department for 25 years. I taught for 30 years total before I got into administration, and 25 years here with the wonderful social studies department. Head football coach for 12 years. Been coaching here for 29 years, something like 44 seasons, 45 seasons. I coached JV baseball at some point, JV boys basketball, assistant varsity boys basketball, and I've been the head girls basketball coach now. It's my second different time for a total of, 10 or 11 seasons, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to, before we get into girls basketball, I wanted to talk about football. So how was those 12 years? I know you were assistant coach for a couple of years. How was that time?
I had a great time. I really fortunate. I mean, I lived in North Brunswick for 25 years, as well as my children were growing up. I have 4 children who graduated from the high school, and as far as players and parents are concerned, okay, you're never going to get along with every single person, but my experience has been overall amazing. I was assistant coach for 9 years, the last couple under Sal Mastretta, who was the head coach, Coach Mastretta. We went to the state playoffs. We won a division championship during those years. And then I was able to take over as a head coach in 2003, had an amazing team, early on. And we made a couple of nice runs. We had 2 division championships, went to the state playoffs on multiple occasions, had some great players, and even more importantly, amazing, awesome people that I worked with. And so, and then after that, I actually got a chance to coach in college for a little while. When I went back to get my master's degree to go into administration, it sounds weird, but it takes less time to be an assistant coach in college at the Division III level than it does to be a head coach in high school. So I went to Kane University. I worked there for 5 seasons at Kane, and had a wonderful experience there too, in coaching linebackers as an assistant coach at Kane. But yeah, so North Brunswick and the current coaching staff, I mean, many of them I was fortunate enough to coach as an assistant coach, all the Sipot brothers. And then a few of them, all 3 of them actually, were assistant coaches at different times, when I was a head coach as well. And Mr. Emmanuel, who's an assistant principal, was an assistant coach with me, and then an assistant coach underneath me. And of course, my great mentor here at the high school is Coach Brahini. I was an assistant coach under Coach Brahini's leadership for several years. And then when I was a head football coach, he was an assistant coach, a great running backs coach for us, during many of my years that I was with the football team. And that's one of the things about the coaches that I've known around here, that everybody's been able to kind of depend on each other and really work with each other. I mean, Raheem Byram, for example, great player for us when I was an assistant coach of football and basketball. Now one of the basketball assistant coaches who are here and working in the district. Somebody else who, I've been lucky enough to know during my time in North Brunswick.
Yeah. I just want to go back to, you said that you coach college. I know a lot of people from North Brunswick go and play athletics in college. What's the major difference, or a couple major differences you've seen from playing in college to playing in high school?
Well, when you're playing in high school, you're playing with oftentimes people who are part of your neighborhood, right? Part of your friend group from grammar school many times, and people who their parents, and you go over to their houses for barbecues and things like that. There's a particular kind of bond that you have in high school that's a little different than anywhere else. It becomes more like a job when you're in college. For me, it was a little bit refreshing though too, because it's different in good, positive ways. And I don't even say positive and negative. It's just different. Because when you're 21, 22, 23 years old, you're a little more mature. You understand the sport that you're playing more. You're looking at life a little bit, graduating from college and figuring out what job you're going to go into. I was lucky enough to coach a couple of guys at linebacker who were first team All-American Division III, there. And one of them went on to play professional ball in Europe. The other one has become a state trooper, a New Jersey state trooper, and just a lot of really solid people. And so it was a little different. Sometimes when you're coaching in high school, you have a 9th grader or 10th grader who doesn't really understand how the drills work, and you're teaching, fundamentals all the time. And while you still teach fundamentals at college, it's on a different level. And yet there's also the fact that at college, if you're not playing a lot of times, then you see people fall away from it, right, or transfer out of school, more often. So again, it's a little bit more separated, and people are older that you're dealing with. So there are similarities. There's that family aspect, that brotherhood kind of thing that you have, but you also have some differences too.
Yeah. So as you said, I've noticed that with my sisters who have grown up playing sports all through college and high school. There is definitely differences. I mean, you are becoming like an adult when you play college sports. Like, you have a lot to look forward to in your life. But I just want to also go back to, you coach boys and girls sports. What are some differences that you've seen just in like the gameplay, especially basketball, with coaching a boys team and a girls team?
Man, this is a tricky question, Christian. You to get me in trouble. Girls listen more. No, hey, listen, and I don't want to make generalities about things, because we had girls who are very different from one another, just like on a boys team, you have boys that are very different from one another, certainly. But I think on the girls teams that I've coached, like, you see the social aspect being very important. That there's this kind of interconnectedness with things. Many times, on boys teams, you might be co-workers in a sense, where you could play together, but you might not really hang out together, or whatever.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, it's, I don't want to get too much into some. We're all people, and we're all, we're an incredibly diverse school, so we know people from all different backgrounds and all that stuff. I'll tell you one thing, that when I first started coaching girls, I was deathly afraid, because I felt like I was getting into something that was completely different in a way. I had never dealt with a group of athletes like that. It was been on teams where, obviously we were all boys and young men, and then coach teams that were young men as well. And so I was pleasantly surprised at, after I got started, that, to see all of those qualities of good athletes that were really the same amongst girls as amongst boys. That kind of tenacity and toughness, openness to critique, and that love of teammates that people have. These are things that characterize successful teams, regardless of whether you're older or younger, whether you're male or female or whatever, right? And so like that, I really grew into enjoying a great deal coaching the girls team, over the years. Yeah.
Speaking of the girls team, last year you broke the record for most wins in history by a coach, beating Mary Williston's 16 wins. I personally, I was very confused at first when I was looking at it, because I was like, didn't he just take it from like Mr. Morrell a couple of years ago? And then I realized after looking yesterday, I was like, oh, we coached back then too. Like, it just totally was a new experience for me. But how did that feel?
Well, I think Miss Will is still in first place. I don't even know, to be honest with you, how many there are. But Miss Will, I think, is still in first place. But I passed Coach Morrell, because I had a bunch of years before Coach Morrell coached, and then I came back, in the last couple of years to coach again. And those kind of numbers, they're not that important. Unless you're talking about Coach Brahini, who's the third winningest coach in the history of Middlesex County, which is just a testament to how awesome he's been, and his also his longevity. here at school, and how wonderful he's been with our players. But I mean, yeah, those numbers, the best things are about the smiles on your team's faces, and the last few years we've been very fortunate. We've been very successful. We were able to get like a division championship 2 years ago. We've had winning seasons, and in part it came back to haunt us this year because they moved us up into the red division. We're playing, much tougher competition, but I was happy in some ways because the players were happy. They kind of felt like they were part of something special, and that was cool. And so I mean, those things are always nice when you look back on them. But the exact numbers don't really matter that much.
Yes. Now I want to talk about the girls' team because, I mean, you've had some core players that have been with you through your couple like new years of coaching, and the two players I want to talk to you most about are Amory Quagliata. So what's it like having her as a player?
Well, I tell you what, I mean, Annie is she is so positive about things. One of the things that made my heart grow is watching film, and you see, last year in a game, Tiana Saipot hits like a reverse layup, and it's like makes a jumper, and the first person to be jumping up and down and be excited is Amory. She really, I see a great love of her teammates there, and she's so happy when other people are successful, and I feel fortunate that our team is like that we are we are genuinely rooting for each other, and really appreciative that we're playing with each other. Beyond that quality, which I think is a great human quality that she has as a basketball player, she's one heck of a shooter. And she's always had, since she's come to us, she's always had that ability to shoot. And she just broke the school record for most threes in a career the other day in our game on Friday against Highland Park. So that's really nice, again, as like a milestone. But I can tell you as a coach, her shooting was always good, but she has improved in so many other areas of the game in the last 3 years. And of course, working in high school, being a teacher, being a coach, it's one of the most satisfying things is to see people when they come in as a ninth grader and they leave as a 12th grader, and how much they've grown, and what they've accomplished. And as far as like a defensive player and getting rebounds and understanding team concepts, a lot of times you don't get those in travel teams, and you don't get those at the other levels until you get to high school. And so Amory's really come along in all those different areas and been really impressive in that improvement.
The other player, speaking of growth, is Naomi Cargo. She just joined the 1,000-point club. So what's it like seeing her grow throughout the years?
Well, I mean, she's a joy to watch. She has an explosiveness on the court that's unique, really. Even very good players that we play against, and we've played against a bunch of Division I players over the past several years. She always seems like the most dangerous person on the court because she has a fluidity to her game that is explosive and is creative. And is really charming to watch. Drives to the basket, sometimes with like physical abandon, and she's been, everybody knows that she scores a lot of points, and everybody defends her, and they double team her, and they face guard her, and all that kind of stuff. And she hasn't allowed it to frustrate her. And she's continued to play through that. I mean, she did pass the 1,000-point mark last year, and the first, girl in school history to do that as a junior. And then this year she passed the overall scoring record for girls. I mean, right now she's somewhere in the 1400s. I could see her, being in the 1500s or maybe 1600 by the end of her career. If it wasn't for COVID, we lost about 11 or 12 games in their sophomore year. But if it wasn't for COVID, she might have a shot at the overall, scoring lead in school history. But as it is, she's probably going to be in second place with one of the boys having more. Played here a long time ago.
Yeah. So, as you said, a lot of people like to guard Niall because they think she's their top scorer. But what is the dynamic of your team? I've seen you guys play a couple games. I think you guys work good on passing the ball. I watched your East Brunswick game where it was like just like that last second. It was a heartbreaker. But
Yeah.
I love the dynamic of your team. It seemed like a lot of support. So how is that dynamic?
So, we have, so between Tiana Saipot and Anne-Marie and Niall, which, by the way, just to say, all three of them, just great people. You know what I mean? Like, they are wonderful to talk to off of the court as well as a coach on the court. So the three of them, they gave us a lot of experience at the guard position. Okay, none of them are really big. So like we had a turnover in size the last couple of years, with people who were rebounders and moving up to the red division, that was a tough task. There's some young players who were thrown in there early on. So when you talk about the dynamic, those three players were used to being kind of the younger players who were coming up, and they had some of the post players who were the veterans. And now things have flipped in a way, and they're pitching in to rebound as well. And we're all trying to do a better job. We're a team that I think we work really, really hard. And when we play defense, well, I mean, we've always been a defensive minded team, who understand how it all works. And it's interesting to see the older players who understand those things teach younger players, because it's more complicated than people think. So I like that. I think that's a big part of dynamic. And I think that we play pretty fast, right? We played pretty, and on Friday night we were able to really overwhelm Highland Park on our senior night. And part of that is because, like you said, we do move the ball pretty well. We share the ball, we push the ball up the court. I hope that we don't play boring basketball. And and we want to be the aggressor and take the game to the other team. And I think that over the last several years we've been pretty successful at doing that.
Yeah. So with this group of people, how do you keep these girls motivated? Is there anything you do as a coach to kind of just keep the morale? I know you just said Tiana Saipot, Anne-Marie, and Niall are just great people, but is there anything you do on your end to get these girls motivated?
Well, yes, but I think it's tough to answer this question fully, because it's not really about a motivational speech before the game or at halftime. It's more, I would hope it's about having respect for people and listening to them and working with them over the course of weeks and months and years, in their lives, where you build up a relationship of respect, and they understand that you care about them and that you want them to succeed. And for me, like, Vince Lombardi used to say, you got to be harder on your team when you win than when you lose. Because when you lose, that's when people need to be picked up. And so I think we've tried to be very positive, about things, and to, giving, a great deal of encouragement. And I hope that that's part of our culture with one another. And I see that, I think I see that with our older players and our younger players too, in that there's a lot of encouragement that's given. And I do have to, I would be absolutely remiss without mentioning Melanie Miranda, because Melanie's our fourth senior. She's a captain, and she took a little different route. Niall and Anne-Marie were starters when they were freshmen. Tiana was also a letter winner when she was a freshman. All three of them are 4-year letter winners. Melanie really came to us and hadn't played much basketball in her life before. She played on the freshman team. Then she played on a JV team sophomore and junior year. And this is her first year as a real full-time varsity player. But she, again, so she kind of brings a different perspective to it for some of the players, who may not be an instant success when they're freshmen and sophomores on the basketball court, but nobody's better than Melanie, in life. She's a great student, and an excellent person who is incredibly persistent and intelligent, and and caring and understanding. And so, I think that those examples that are set by the seniors, they speak 1,000 words. There's an old saying, you say, coaches don't win games. Coaches win players, and players win games, right? So, I mean, they're on the court. They're the ones who are doing the work on the court to get the win, and you're going to earn and deserve that win, right? But hopefully what coaches can do is to win those players over to the system that's in place and to the team concept that's happening, so that everybody's on the same page.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I think a lot of coaches just like care about either their stats or like the record of the team and how going far, but player to player is always such an important thing to build the team. One last question. I know there's always new coaches and just even coaches that have been here for a while, but they always are looking for advice. So what is a good piece of advice that either stuck with you or that you have for new coaches or any coach?
I'd go back to the same kind of theme that we were talking about, is say that relationship building is the most important thing. And I have to say, like, so we used to have a 10 commandments for our football coaches, our football staff, right? And part of those 10 commandments was know your stuff. I mean, like, yes, we do need to know like what the strategies are and how to manage the clock and what, all of those things and what we're doing on inbounds plays and how screens should be set. So we do have to know our stuff. But the number one, commandment was to care about our players. So that kind of care, if you show it and if you're sincere about it, okay, that will bring all those other things together. I mean, if you care about somebody, but you don't know anything about basketball, then it might not work that well either. So it's not like a simple thing, whereas this one thing is going to make you successful. It's a combination of a lot of things. But that most important thing, I think, is that relationship building with players, to have them understand what that hard work is all for and how they can approach things psychologically and as teammates and as leaders, and building leaders of all your players with one another, because again, it's incredibly more powerful. I maybe I'll end on a story, but we had this great ceremony a couple months ago for the 1997 basketball team, in which I was lucky enough to be an assistant coach on. And lots of people say, that's Coach Brahini's greatest coaching job, right? And I'm not going to put any words in Coach Brahini's mouth. I don't know if he'll say it or not, but it was not a hard coaching job, to be honest with you, because Coach Brahini and I would be in the coach's office, and the players would be in the locker room before we went in there to talk to them before the game. And the things that were being said by people like Tim Howard and Raheem Byram and John Saipot and and a whole bunch of people who were on that team together. Okay, the things that they were saying to each other were the exact same things that coaches would say to players, right? So they got it, and it's so much more powerful when it comes from your peer, from your teammate, okay, than when it comes from an adult. And so that's a kind of thing that you try to foster, right, as a coach to the best of your ability.
Yeah, that was a great way to put it. Once again, I think you also have to know, like your skills, but relationships are once again a very important thing to many sports teams. So I want to thank you for your time here today. And you guys have a game tonight against South Brunswick at 6:30.
Yes.
And then if this doesn't come up by January 24th, they also have a game January 26th, which is a Thursday, against Old Bridge at 6:30.
At home, that's right.
Yep. Thank you very much, Coach Z.
Thank you so much, Christian. I appreciate it.
No problem. And you guys can catch us for our next episode in a couple of weeks, where we'll have Marilyn Muldowney. Thank you. Bye-bye.